So I'm really pleased to be introducing this plenary session, which will be led by Jane Elder, Executive Director currently of the Wisconsin Academy of Sciences, Arts, and Letters, and previously communication strategist in many different realms. I'll be talking a little bit more about her in a moment. I wanted to begin by saying I had a dream last night that I was at this meeting, and someone was giving a talk about the need to tell compelling Chaucers. I couldn't figure that out. And in the dream I said, he's trying to pronounce Chaucers, which is French for stories. And then I woke up, of course, and examining the dream, I said, Chaucers doesn't mean stories, it means shoes. But upon further reflection, I decided that I had made this pun in my dream in the service of unity. And that what the pun was really about was that even though activists and academics use different means and words, they're working towards the same social justice goals. And of course, at another level, the dream just meant we have to tell compelling stories, which is what we'll be focusing on in this plenary today. So after I give a bit of context for the session, Jane will be talking with us about how and why it's important to frame our issues powerfully and connect them with cultural values. We'll then be breaking into small groups. You're at tables with labels that tell you what your audience, your specific audience will be. And you will be writing messages for those audiences using specific scenarios. Then after we do that, we'll have a short gallery walk. You can do your aerobics in between as well, in which we get to see other messages from the other tables. And then we'll have some closing thoughts and summation. And as Margie said, we've been planning this session for a long time. We're very excited about its potential outcomes in terms of moving us forward individually and as a group in our efforts to craft effective biopolitical messages for a range of audiences. Okay, so I guess the question is, why is a structured, strategic approach to communications even needed? And if we can get the Prezi to work, let's begin with an analogy, the central dogma. We know now that this iconic formula put forward at the birth of the gene age is not just simplistic, but in some regards quite inaccurate. It doesn't describe what really goes on in cells as they go about the business of producing proteins. Yet many of us, when it comes to communication, often operate with a model, conscious or unconscious, that is similarly unsophisticated. Call it the legacy of classical rhetoric and the Enlightenment. We bank on the power of empiricism and believe that if we communicate clearly enough, people cannot fail but respond rationally. We cling to our membership in the reality-based community, which Karl Rove in 2004 defined for journalist Ron Susskind as, quote, people who believe that solutions emerge from judicious study of discernible reality, unquote. And Karl Rove went on to say, of course, that's not the way the world really works anymore. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too, and that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and all of you, will be left just to study what we do. To paraphrase John Goodman in The Big Lebowski, say what you will about the lacking rest of my speech. It only printed out one page. Say what you will about Enlightenment values, but at least they were an ethos. So what we know now is that the relationship of little t truth to behaviors and attitudes and policy is contested, highly contested. And there have been many, many people who have studied the ways in which the communication of facts does or does not translate into policy. And this is one that I particularly like, boundary studies. This is a typology from Hoppe in 2008. And whether you can understand the details of the diagram, what it basically tells you is that there is not a linear model for communicating and achieving policy. Basically, there are all kinds of attitudes about science and about politics. There are attitudes about whether we do or do not want to agree in our politics. And so it becomes a very complicated equation. And to study these boundary objects, so for our cases, a boundary object would be a data or a social situation. For example, data about ovarian hyperstimulation rates, or a policy situation might be the outsourcing of wombs for surrogacy, and those, or police departments doing racial profiling. Those are boundary objects around which many different advocacy groups converge, and they look at them in very different ways. So it's not an easy equation. So no, we're not in Kansas anymore. And so we're looking at how beliefs, behaviors, and social change are related and interrelated. And one of the key bodies of information that has been accrued and built around this issue was done by Amos Tversky and Dan Kahneman. These are two of their key papers. Dan Kahneman received the Nobel Prize for economics, and Amos Tversky is deceased. But they began in the 1970s looking and challenging the notion of the rational actor, of what the economists call homo economicus, people who make their choices to maximize their utility. And Kahneman and Tversky found out, oops, no, people are not really rational actors. In fact, they operate under a range of biases and cognitive circumstances that lead them not always to behave in an entirely rational fashion. In fact, we are a mix of both the irrational and the rational. And so we have to think very clearly when we build our communications about this, rather than just that linear equation.